You don't want to hear these. Wonderful humor. Hal will read the words of Henri Hardenberg.
As I said last week, Henri was with us in University House only for about a year and a half, and much of that time he was ailing. But he left behind a remarkable document, the testimony of a man. The words I'm reading are Henri's, they're not mine. They're Henri's words. This is his story. Active Duty, Memories of War and Peace. Part 2, The Cop. I was recruited fresh out of the NAM by the Washington State Patrol to become a state trooper. I attended the 3-month State Patrol Academy in Shelton, where I learned everything from pursuit driving, accident investigation, fatality investigation, state traffic laws, and first aid. The State Patrol is a paramilitary, spit and polish organization, and as a result, the academy is run like the military to include physical exercise, roll calls, spit and polish appearance. Many trooper cadets were not used to this lifestyle of discipline because they had never been in military service. But it was a piece of cake for me since I had just come out of the jungles of Vietnam. The daily morning ritual started with doing push-ups, calisthenics, and a 3-mile run. After which we showered and donned our starched khaki fatigues and spit-shined boots. We then gathered in the flag rotunda to perform the daily flag ceremony before going to breakfast. Each morning the trooper cadets stood in formation 4 rows deep, graded by height at parade rest. That means standing with your feet 18 inches apart and hands clasped, palms open behind your back. Parade rest is the prelude to the order of attention, when you click your feet together, ready to give the hand salute. The trooper cadet in charge of the formation gave the orders, as another trooper cadet, every day a different one, raised the flag. Kickstand. Within the King County Sheriff's Office, a unit consisting of 16 motorcycle deputies enforced state and county traffic laws. As a secondary function, it protected and escorted dignitaries and VIPs. As a high-profile unit, the appearance must be beyond reproach. Spit-shine motorcycle boots, tailored breeches, brown leather jacket, and shiny motorcycles, Kawasaki 1000s. And of course, the high self-esteem that goes with the assignment. Only the cream of the crop was chosen, and of course that presented a challenge to me. I was always one to meet challenges head-on. Vacancies in this unit were rare, and when they occurred, one had to apply via the chain of command. The applicant was required to have a motorcycle endorsement, to have exceeds standards evaluations for the past 3 years, to be in good physical shape, and to have been in the department for 5 years. If the application was accepted, one appeared before an oral board consisting of a motorcycle sergeant and 2 motorcycle deputies. Then came the riding part of the selection, an obstacle course, and the final challenge, to show the ability to upright a fully equipped Kawasaki 1000 police motorcycle lying on its side and weighing about 750 pounds. There was a trick to it, and you were shown once how to do it, and then it was up to you. Once accepted, you underwent a grueling 2-week police motor school where you learned to maintain your assigned motorcycle, pursuit riding, and high and low speed maneuvers. The high-speed course was fun, and it was my forte. I initially had problems with the slow course, maneuvering through several obstacles, weaving around cones, all within a set time. It was tough, but fun. From using the clutch and handbrake so much, I developed carpal tunnel and lost feeling in both wrists. But graduate I did, by golly. Also taught was coming off the paved highway onto a gravel road at 50 miles an hour to apply your rear brakes Never apply your front brakes unless you want to end up face down in the dirt. At the State Patrol Academy in Shelton, I was taught to take a police motorcycle at about 100 miles an hour, setting up for curves, high, low, high. Also taught was skidding on an oil slick, and how to regain your momentum, or how to avoid colliding with the vehicle by using the counter steering method. Easier said than done. We learned how to deal with a violator, to stop, choose an ideal location. In case of shooting, you have nowhere to hide behind except for the motorcycle. And activate emergency equipment and keep a close eye on the violator. Call in your location to the dispatcher. Once the violator is stopped, kick out your kickstand on the left side of the bike and dismount from the right side, lest the kickstand fail and the bike tip over to the left, causing a 750-pound bike to fall on you. Keep eyeing the violator while dismounting the bike and keep your right hand on your weapon. Approach the car from the passenger side. Violators expect you to come on the driver's side, giving them an advantage to prepare for you. Look into the vehicle for weapons or contraband and initiate the contact from the passenger window. Once you graduate from the course, you proudly wear your motorcycle wings. If you get in an accident or you drop your bike, tradition requires that you wear your wings upside down until the next guy in your unit drops his. Suspicious circumstances. I've been on patrol on my own for about 2 years, and I was in a phase of my career where I wasn't a rookie anymore. And I thought I already knew everything there was to know about law enforcement. I'd gotten past the initial shock of seeing my first dead person, homicide victim, child abuse case, and so on. I made it through all these situations and thought I was pretty hard. I had survived my first physical fight, high-speed pursuit, drug raid, and ass chewing from my lieutenant. You hear stories about how police officers lose sleep and have to seek counseling due to the trauma and stress of the job. I made it through all this and never felt depression, anger, or sleeplessness. You had to be hard to be a police officer, and the guys who experienced those things were just not cut out for the job. This was my considered opinion after my first 2 years. My perception of the job, and maybe more importantly, my perception of myself, was about to change. It was a nice summer evening in August, and I was working the second shift, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., in White Center. It had been uneventful, and I was heading for my lunch break. A call from the dispatcher came over the radio. Suspicious circumstances, female down, unconscious, and not breathing. I was only about 2 blocks from the address. All I could think of was, damn it, I'm going to miss my lunch break again. It was probably some elderly lady who had passed away, and I was going to catch another report and be stuck on scene all night waiting for the coroner to show up. It was my job, though, and I knew that this is what I had signed up for, so I responded. I beat the paramedics to the scene by several minutes. For a cop, this is not always ideal. And sometimes you roll up into a situation that you're not capable of handling because you don't have the medical expertise needed. You carry a gun, not a trauma kit. Applying pressure to a bleeding wound or starting CPR is just about all you were trained to do as a police officer. When I rolled up on this scene, he was different. The only thing I saw was a little boy, I'll call him Jimmy. He was sitting on the front porch with his face in his hands. Jimmy was 9 years old and looked to be your typical little boy. Dirty blue jeans, sweaty hair, bicycle sitting next to him. I saw that Jimmy's grandfather or grandmother had passed away. As an inexperienced cop, you seem to jump to conclusions and think you have it figured out before you even have any of the facts. In your mind, you think you know everything because you made it past your rookie year. All Jimmy could tell me was that it was all his fault. I knew I should have left her and went outside to ride my bike. I wasn't real sure what I had on my hands at this point and asked Jimmy where she was. Jimmy, still crying without lifting his head, pointed to the open front door of the house. In the master bedroom, I found a 30-year-old woman hanging lifeless from the ceiling fan with a rope around her neck. It was apparent she was dead. I returned to Jimmy on the porch. He was still sitting and crying in his hands. I wanted to comfort him, but I needed to find out if this was a suicide or homicide, or if the woman was even his mother. I placed my hand on Jimmy's back and asked him what had happened. His mother's boyfriend had called on the phone and broken up with her, Jimmy said. His mother was very upset, and he just wanted to get out of the house, so he went outside to ride his bicycle for a while until his mom calmed down. I'll never forget Jimmy's anger as he shouted at me, I knew I shouldn't have left her alone. I should have stayed with her. She was crying. I've never been so speechless in my life. I knew there was nothing I could say or do that would provide comfort or relief to Jimmy at this point. As a police officer, you always think that you have the answers and will be able to provide help to a child in time of need. But I had nothing in my arsenal to help Jimmy with his pain. Jimmy was blaming himself for his selfishness and for the death of his mother. I'm not one to preach, but for a mother to kill herself and leave that site and responsibility for her son to live and deal with is unconscionable. Once the dust had settled and things were winding down, I began to feel something I had never felt up to this point in my career. I was totally helpless. What could I do? What could I say? The hard, terrible answer was nothing. I could only watch. I'll never forget Jimmy sitting in the front seat of my patrol car. No family could be located for the boy, and the only thing we had was a counselor from the state. The counselor was trying to help Jimmy, but his face was turned away from her with the deepest, blankest stare I had ever seen. I will never forget his face with the muddy streaks created from the tears running down his little dirty cheeks. On the inside, I was crying, but I had to be hard around my peers. In some ways, I have never stopped crying for Jimmy on the inside. I've never forgotten that I'm not a God, that I don't have all the answers. In this one night on the job, I learned more about life and myself than I had in the previous 2 years of my career, or probably any of the years that followed. Throughout my career in law enforcement, I was involved in homicide investigations, narcotics investigations, numerous high-speed chases, and 2 officer-involved shootings. But none of it had the impact on my heart as the night that I found little Jimmy sitting on the porch with his tear-soaked face in his hands, blaming himself for his mother's senseless death. All the training had not prepared me for this. I remember sitting in those critical incident stress classes they gave you at the academy, thinking, this is ridiculous. Why don't they just teach us what we need and let us out on the street? Now I was thinking maybe I should pay a little more attention. I lost sleep for the first time since becoming a cop. I started to wonder whether I was just one of those soft guys who wasn't cut out for the job. Surely that wasn't possible. This reaction must be normal. Just go home, have a few beers, and it will all go away. Now I know that this is why cops struggle with alcoholism at an alarmingly high rate. Too often we can't admit that something bothered us, got us down, made us helpless. We don't want to be looked upon as soft by other officers, and it's so hard to admit that something is eating away at our mind and heart and soul. So we drown our feelings in a bottle. I was no different. I had to take a hard look at myself and my career. I had to face the fact that being tough and capable meant doing my level best, facing my fears and uncertainties honestly. It was a tough process, and scary too. None of the emotions I was feeling, though, would ever compare to what little Jimmy would endure for the rest of his life. I often think of him, of where he is and what has become of him. I'll have Jimmy sitting on the porch with his face in his hands, engraved in my memory forever. The lonely years. I was working swing shift 2 to 10 p.m. in the city of Burien one summer day, and I received a call of a suicide. I responded, and Deputy M was my backup. The address they gave me was an apartment complex right off Ambon Boulevard. These apartments were in the better part of our precinct. Well, en route, I was wondering what I was going to find. Would it be a self-inflicted gunshot victim? Would I find brains splattered all over the room? Or would I find a victim with slit wrists lying in a pool of blood? I was trying to mentally prepare myself. Police work, every call is a surprise. I arrived first and waited for Deputy M. I didn't want to go to the front door alone in case of weapons being involved. We climbed the stairs to the third floor, found the apartment number, and found the door ajar. That was a little strange. I unholstered my weapon, and we carefully entered the apartment. A noise came from down the hall. I yelled, "Hello, police!" An uncomfortable silence followed, until we heard, "I'm in here, don't try to stop me." The voice was female, elderly, and wavering. Deputy M and I exchanged a look, and then we cautiously approached the kitchen. It turned out that we saw a little old lady kneeling in front of the oven with her head inside. There was no smell of gas, but we could feel a little heat coming from the oven. It was an electric oven, and she was in no danger at all. We sat her down and asked her a few questions. It turned out that she was lonely. She had a son in Seattle, and though she spoke of him fondly, he seldom came to visit her and rarely called. She had no other family, and her husband had died years ago. So she had called us. All she wanted was a little company. We didn't have another call, so we sat there for about 20 minutes, chatting, had some tea with her. When we left, she was fine. The next week, I got the same suicide call at the same address. And I ended up having tea with the lonely old lady, as I had the week before. Rather than let this occur a third time, Deputy M and I took turns to stop by at least once a week to say hi and to chat. Several months later, I found out that she passed away. I hope that we have made those days at the end of her life a little less lonely. I've seen it so many times, older people abandoned by their families, living in isolation, desperate for companionship, yet tossed aside like garbage once they'd outlived their usefulness. On the day that I heard about that little old lady's death, I promised myself that either on or off the job, every time I would see a senior citizen, I would make it my business to make eye contact and smile. And no matter how phony it might sound, say, "Have a nice day." Because heaven forbid, we will all grow old someday. Police humor. I'm of the opinion that only war can top police work in terms of providing the raw material for humor. All the elements are there, and the players are members of an inept bureaucracy. They are armed, and they have broad statutory and unlimited authority. They are constantly called to the scene of unfolding disasters, and they stumble into the strangest situations for which no one could be adequately prepared. From a cop's perspective, the community has an impressive arsenal of bizarre behavior, not the least of which is contributed by his fellow cops and, surprisingly, by himself. All this is drowned in chronic fatigue and very real danger. Constant exposure to life with its raw ends has obvious effects. Cops who remain on the streets gradually become coarsened by what they see and what they have to do, and yet they struggle to maintain association with the normal or civilian world. They try to turn it off at the end of the shift and not to take it home with them. It, of course, being the version of reality that they do not share with the rest of society. The dichotomy of their lives takes a toll, and therefore, like the military, police constitute a subculture of their own, slightly apart from the mainstream of society. Like the spies in old novels, cops live in two worlds. Police humor tends to be dark, often morbid. Some of the truly funniest people I have known are cops, and their humor has the added appeal of frequently being wildly inappropriate. Much police humor is not funny to normal people. Stories about true incidents that cops find hysterical sometimes simply horrify normal people and serve to widen the gap between the police and the normal world. This is true with other occupations also. The hospital emergency rooms and firefighting. Sometimes a true story is so good that it gets edited into two versions. The civilian version being milder and less inclusive and therefore appropriate to share cautiously with normal people. The more accurate version, of course, is the more bizarre and horrifying truth of the matter. The following stories are mostly about stuff that I did and said, because I am willing to be the sacrificial goat that serves to illustrate the point. Sometimes our humor would backfire, which in itself was funny to all the other people. Case in point, but before I get to the case in point, I haven't turned the brightness on. This has just been fading.
Oh,
Must be.
sure.
The text is fading. Fortunately, I've got a backup. Let's see, can you give me the paper?
Yeah, it is kind of dark.
Yeah.
Oops, I turned it off.
Okay, great. Case in point. It was common on the streets to hear the most ludicrous explanations of innocence from the people you arrest. One night in White Center, I arrested a drunk guy whom I observed breaking a liquor store window with a large brick. I called for backup, and another deputy gave me assistance. The drunk protested his innocence and told us we had made a mistake, although no one else had even been near him on the street, and I had clearly seen him deliberately break the window with a big rock. After listening to his drunken insistence on his innocence, I told the man that I knew he was innocent, but that the department was having a false arrest contest. And that if I had two more innocent guys by the end of the shift, I will win a trip to Hawaii. I only said it to get a laugh out of my fellow deputy, and shut up the drunk for a while. I booked him, wrote a brief report, then cleared the call and forgot about it. These kinds of misdemeanor arrests are common and usually forgettable. Most of them don't even go to trial. They get plea bargained at arraignments, which are like livestock herding. Which are like livestock herding operations in courts all over the country. For the police, the matter usually ends when they clear the call and move on to the next one. This one, much to my surprise, went to trial, and I received a subpoena. On the trial date, the defendant was there, represented by a young public defender, in the courtroom packed with all the players in the daily melodrama, cops, witnesses, other defendants, and so forth. When the case was called, I testified briefly about the circumstances and the arrest. Then something strange happened. This was when the public defender put the defendant on the witness stand. This was unusual in a simple case like this one because there is little to gain and a lot to lose by allowing the defendant to be cross-examined by the prosecutor. What were they doing? The defendant's testimony started with being placed under arrest, after which he proceeded to quote me verbatim about the false arrest contest. All the cops in the courtroom were laughing quietly. To me, they sounded like a pack of donkeys braying. I was worried about being recalled to the witness stand by the defense, but then I was blessed with a miracle. The judge interrupted and lectured him. "Young man, this is a court of law, and you were perilously close to being found in contempt. I know perfectly well that no police officer told you any such thing. I find you guilty." The strange thing was that the guy quoted me exactly. Most of the drunks I arrested couldn't exactly say what planet they had been on at the time of the arrest. But this guy replayed every word I had said. The incident crimped my style for a few nights and provided some fresh roll call material. And then there was the emergency divorce. It must be performed with an air of great dignity and a perfect poker face. When you get really tired of seeing the same drunken couple in a family disturbance call night after night, you would effect an affair of official majesty and set the hook. Listen up, folks. You don't get along and fight. You want to get divorced. I'll give you a divorce. The state of Washington empowers us to grant emergency divorces in certain severe cases, but only when and if you feel you have reached the end of the line. Now raise your right hand and repeat after me. I hereby swear that I do not get along with my mate, and hereby request the marriage to be dissolved. I, by the power vested in me, now declare you both divorced. Unbelievable as it sounds, this approach works, because our customers were mostly unsophisticated drunks. Really? They would ask like children. It was guaranteed to solve the problem until they sobered up, by which time they were too chagrined to make a formal complaint. Ideally, the emergency divorce would be performed in front of a new deputy, who would naturally be appalled. If a new cop was favorably impressed by this procedure, it was evidence of great potential, which deserved careful nurturing and tutelage. Most of us had to be hardened by the street a bit before we lowered ourselves to those kinds of antics. The sadness of it all. If you're any good at the art of being a cop, and it is an art, you learn to be a problem solver, which involves being a police officer. I often refer to myself and the other deputies as the Band-Aid guys. I'm not an expert, but I've gained some experience and learned a few things over the years. However, we can't solve every problem. Several years ago, Deputy A and I responded to a domestic disturbance call. Once there, we learned through the broken English of the Hispanic husband that his wife had been having an affair, and she was now leaving the house and her family. They had 2 young children together, a girl who was about 8 years old and a boy who was 6. The girl was upset, but she seemed to understand a little of what was going on. The boy was another story. He was very upset, crying, sobbing that his mother was going away from him, that his mommy was leaving him. There was no consoling him. His sister tried, but was unsuccessful, so did we. Deputy A and I were just about in tears. That poor little boy was losing his mother, and he couldn't understand why. But he did understand that she didn't love him enough to stay. And I have to say, it did piss me off. The father was just angry and unable to help. It was painful to listen to the boy crying so. I was a father and had gone through the same ordeal. I could see this was going to haunt this kid for the rest of his life. What can we do about it? Then I remember the stuffed animals that most of our deputies carry in the trunk. I went out to my car, and digging through the bag, I found a cute Kermit the Frog, which also happened to be some kind of a puppet. I went back inside the house where the little boy was sitting in the living room with his sister, hiding the frog behind my back. Pulling the frog out and manipulating his mouth open as I did my best Kermit the Frog voice imitation, I talked to the boy, trying to get him to understand that his daddy loved him and that his mommy would come to see him all the time. It seemed to work. He stopped crying and got a smile on his face. I talked to the boy for several minutes as Kermit the Frog, and then I gave him the frog. He was happy for a few minutes, and then the reality of the situation got the best of him, and he began to cry again. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything to be done about it. As much as I wanted one, I did not have a magic wand. Deputy A and I had to leave. We got to the door and both turned to look at the boy sobbing on the floor. Neither of us said a word. There was nothing we could say to that child. I just didn't have the skills to bring some solace to the little boy. I'm not sure anybody does. I'm glad that I was able to give the boy some brief happiness, but I went away sad too. Thinking about the incident even now makes me emotional. I've gone through that same pain in my personal life. Sometimes we have to experience the pain right along with those who are going through it. You can't keep it out. Those are the ones that get to you. They don't happen every day, but they build up. Sometimes they build up into a wall between you and the rest of the world. That wall is as dangerous for us as anything else in police work. It's a terrible balance to maintain. Get too involved and you lose the ability to be effective. Don't get involved enough and you become emotionally constipated and choke on the poison building up inside you. I learned an important lesson that day, one they had not taught at the academy. Do the most good you can, do your best. Don't look back, don't second guess yourself. The journey. It was one of those low periods in my life where I wondered if I'd chosen the right career path, that of law enforcement. In addition, I was trying to grapple with my personal life and I could not see my way out of the rut I was in. The steel bars of the country jail slammed shut behind me as I walked back to my cruiser. The 23-year-old stripper I had just booked on a narcotics charge was my third arrest of the shift. When she had learned that her impressive display of silicone attachments was not going to keep her from a felony dope rap, she had let loose with a well-aimed spit missile, and then I felt like steam cleaning my face. All I wanted to do was grab a cup of hot coffee, get back to the precinct, park myself in an office, finish my paperwork, and go home. It was that kind of day. The afternoon sun blinded my eyes as I crawled along with traffic, impatiently droning my fingers against the steering wheel. I looked at my face in the rearview mirror. My cheek was irritated where I had wiped off the wad of spit. Getting spat on was my least favorite form of nonverbal communication. And I had restrained myself from bitch slapping her. It was a fitting end to another lousy day. I had every intention of putting on the blinders that every cop keeps handy when he doesn't want to get involved with people. I felt the accumulated effect of 20 years of pushing a police cruiser around the city while being a frontline witness of violence, greed, and general nastiness of the people we try our damnedest to serve and protect on a daily basis. To serve and protect, the policeman's mission statement. I was counting down the days until my retirement liberated me from the job I had once been so proud of. Now I was just like the inmates in the county jail, counting down the days for my release. Sitting there in traffic, I wondered what had happened to me. The things that once had given me simple joy and pleasure now failed even to pique my interest. There was a coffee shop up the road in the blue-collar neighborhood I was driving through. I get a cup of coffee and use their bathroom to scrub my face one more time. I was about to turn down the side street when I saw her, a little girl of about 8, walking alone. The little girl was standing patiently on the corner just up ahead, waiting to cross the busy street, while the never-ending stream of cars flowed by. As I drove closer, I could see her more clearly. She was young and black. She had a milk chocolate complexion, and her long dark hair had been pulled tightly into a ponytail. She was wearing a school uniform, and despite the chill, she wasn't wearing a jacket. She looked up and down the busy 4-lane street as she patiently waited for her chance to cross. Without even thinking about what I was doing, I drove close to the corner and slowed to a stop, flicking on the overhead light bar of my cruiser to stop traffic behind me. I wanted to give her the chance to cross, but she didn't step off the curb. For a moment, she looked pensively across the wide intersection, and then her big eyes met mine. I got out of the patrol car and walked over to her where the stares of rush hour commuters stopped behind me and to those passing from the opposite direction. "May I walk you across the street?" I asked, taking off my sunglasses and leaning down so that she could look directly into my eyes. She nodded shyly and reached out her hand as if we crossed 100 streets together. I took her small hand in mine and felt its warmth. "My mommy always said that a policeman would help me," she whispered in a soft voice with a slight southern accent, and her face lit up with a genuine smile that melted all the harshness away. She looked up at me, and we swung our arms slightly as we began our journey. It was a magic moment. All the cars on the street in all four corners of the intersection slowed and stopped to watch our progress. Drivers, instead of being angry at the delay, were mesmerized by the sight of the uniformed cop walking hand in hand across the street with a little girl. I saw smiles on the faces of some that earlier I would have cynically pegged as suspects or parole violators. I felt that I had felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt good inside. Our journey ended much too quickly. As we stepped onto the far curb, I released her little hand. "Thank you, officer," she said, and gave me another incredible smile. Then she did something that so surprised me that I couldn't even react for a moment. She stood up on her tiptoes and threw her thin arms around my neck and hugged me. "I love you, officer," she whispered with her soft cheek next to mine. There was no trace of anything in her tone but a little girl's truth. I hugged her back hesitantly and quickly let her go. I watched her for a moment as she walked away, then turned back toward my cruiser. I noticed that the traffic still wasn't moving, that the occupants of the stopped cars were all smiling, as if the image of the cop and the little girl had touched them in some way. In that moment, as I stepped off the curb, I remembered why I had become a cop. Retirement. When I retired from law enforcement, it took a long time to get my life to the point where I could just enjoy it and my family life. I had been in the front lines fighting crime and taking out the trash for so long, it was hard to slow down and to turn to, and make that adjustment. I had years of experience with nothing but time on my hands to just sit and think. The struggle was long and hard, but I was a cop at heart and not used to giving up the fight. My son, God bless his heart, gave me an idea to chronicle all that I had seen and witnessed in my 30-year police career. The problem was that I just kept putting it off, because writing my memoirs was like reliving it all on every attempt. Now I decided to just sit down and start writing about some of the unforgettable people I worked with and encountered. A friend asked me once, what was it about law enforcement that made it so intriguing to me? The money isn't going to make you rich. The hours are horrendous. Many people don't like or respect you. They verbally abuse you and sometimes try to physically harm you or kill you. And there's always a chance that you might not come home. I told him it was simply the camaraderie of working with people whom I respect, doing a job that not everyone can do or will do, and knowing that any of those people will do anything humanly possible, including risking the most precious thing they possess, their own lives, to get to me if I need help, just because I'm another law enforcement officer, whether they know me or not, whether they like me or not, no matter what agency I work for. I know this because I had experienced it offhand when the police motorcycle I was riding was struck by a hit-and-run driver. I tried to explain to my friend that over and above all the traffic we hear over the police radio, all the calls, all the information put out, the one thing our ears will never miss is 1033, officer needs help, shots fired, or officer down. At that point, the only thing that we're aware of is an overwhelming urge to get there, to be there, to help that officer, to run to the thing that everyone other than other cops want to run away from, just because it's another cop in trouble, at risk. He said he understood, but I knew he really did not. The only people who really understand are cops, firemen, or soldiers who are willing to stand in harm's way. Once the badge goes on, it never comes off. Whether they can see it or not, it fuses to the soul through adversity, adrenaline, and, yes, fear. No one who has ever worn it with pride, integrity, and guts can never forget that feeling when you're responding to that unknown, adrenaline-pumping call where you face an unknown, volatile situation. When a good cop leaves the job and retires to a better life, many are jealous, some are pleased, and yet others who may already have retired wonder. We wonder if he knows what he's leaving. Because we already know. We know, for example, that after 30 years of camaraderie that few experience, a longing will remain for those past times. We know that in the law enforcement life, there's a fellowship which lasts long after the uniforms are hung in the back of the closet. We know that even if he throws them away, the uniforms, they will be on him with every step and breath that remain in his life. We also know how the very burying of the man speaks of what he was, and in his heart still is. There are burdens of the job. You will still look at people suspiciously, still see what others do not see or choose to ignore, and always will look at the rest of the law enforcement world with a respect for what they do, grown only in a lifetime of knowing. Never think for one moment that you're escaping from that life. You are escaping the job and merely being allowed to leave active duty. What I'm trying to say is that when I eased into retirement, in my heart I knew that I would never forget for one moment that I'm blessed to be a child of God and that I'm still a member of the greatest fraternity the world has ever known. Coda, time. I had a slow Sunday. The weather was nice, and I just got home from church. I was thinking about the homily Father R. had delivered during Mass. My thoughts during the service had wandered off to another time of my life. It seems illogical to think about what I was doing more than 40 years ago. How did I get here? How could I have ever possibly imagined that life would take me here? Trip flares, claymore mines, firefights, ambushes, medevacs, and sea rations. High streamer artillery rounds at night, and FU lizards, Hueys, C-130s, and C-123s. Being on ambush patrol, having first watch or last watch, and the most uninterrupted sleep. Stopping on a trail, leaning over and boosting your rucksack while leaning on your rifle. The adrenaline rush of first rounds fired into contact. The chill when hearing the call, medic. The coolness of the gunship pilots when you were scared shitless. During my second tour, I called and adjusted my own fire support, both indirect fires, artillery gunfire, Army helicopters, and fast movers. Nothing I've done in my life has equaled my experience in Vietnam. So weird. And here I am now, Mr. Basic middle-class suburban guy, worrying about how to use the internet, and feeling real lazy, thinking about having someone mow my lawn and ditch for me. I guess the weirdest thing for me is the contrast. My life then and now. I turned 69 on June 9th. This was written in 2012. So maybe that has got me thinking. As always, when I reflect on all this, I remember those guys who did not make it to enjoy life, had families, experienced CDs, cassette tapes, iPods, have children, wives, and grandchildren, divorces, and remarriage. My team leader, John G., killed in action January 24th, 1967. And Johnny W., killed in action 8/23/67. Both fine men who died while ignoring enemy fire trying to do their jobs are foremost in my mind. These are the guys who should have made it. Where did the years go? Listening to Father R's homily, I look around and think, man, how did I get here? Okay, I guess this is enough for me on this Sunday. The testimony of a man, Henri Hardenberg.
The world can't have too many Henri Hardenbergs. What can we say? At ease, Henri.
Also, thanks to Karen for putting together the slideshows last week and this week. I forgot to mention it last week, but she does a lot to make these Saturday mornings successful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also like to thank Sally.
Hey, wait for the microphone. Thank you.
Sure, thanks. I'd like to thank Sally for letting us have this insight into Henri, which we would never otherwise have had. That was really a special experience.
In fact, a very unusual pleasure and insight. I think we all are in a mood to just get up and take our thoughts with us into the rest of the day. Thank you all very much for coming.